Hi, this is Christian. Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to do the model part 2. This time, we're going to render data from a database to our application. Okay, so before I start, just a little bit housekeeping here. On the portfolio page, you'll see that I fixed the buttons here to look a little bit nicer. I had an incorrect syntax for that. I also changed the color here for to make it green. Added another button here to delete all of them as opposed to a single one. Okay, so let's take a look and see what I did first before we proceed. So here is the portfolio blade page. I added a link at the top, and basically is going to the delete as well, with no ID, by the way, as opposed to the ones we have on the bottom. We pass an ID. Okay, and so I put it here, make it a danger, and this is changed to a success, and I float that right. Okay, and then on the bottom here, it was initially incorrect. I put the word small, but it's just SM for that. And I changed, yeah, I think that's pretty basically it. I changed the color to secondary and danger. That's just all I did for this one, okay? So nothing changes here. All right, so that's good to go. So here is what I did for the web route. Now, in the previous video, I asked you to go ahead and try to see if you can put this into a controller called main. And this is what I did. So I created a controller called main controller, and I moved these controllers or these functions into that controller. So the get, demo, contact, thank you, and so forth. Now, this is a special case. This is part of really of the get request that actually pull data from the database, or in this case from the data file. But so it's kind of like a bit odd to put out here because I don't want to put under the prefix of project. Just in any way how you do it, but I'll leave it out here. And it is actually inside your project controller as opposed to the main controller. Okay, so here is my controllers. The main controller here looks very similar to the other one. I basically, name this function here, and the operation is exactly the same. Okay, and then the project controller, as you can see, I'll leave this open, add the portfolio in here, and just like before. Okay, so now we are going to do the database part. So that means we're not going to use the data anymore. So from this data file here, this file here, I'm not going to use this anymore to inject data. You can leave this as is, or you can remove it. That's fine, but you can leave it as is. It's okay. So now I'm going to use the models inside the models folder here, right? We have a project model. Now this one here, the way we created was that we, did it just locally here. This time we're going to use the database to do this for us. So that means I'm not going to use any of these at all. Okay, we're going to have the model class handle all the database connections and do the entire operations, including retrieve, update, delete, and things like that. It has a built-in framework already, so you don't have to do that yourself. If you want to do some additional queries, then you can write your own. But you see that most of these are already built into the system because it's so common, especially these CRUD operations. Okay, so what I need here is really an attribute that will include these fields that will be injected into the model class somewhere, and then it will be used to pull data from the database. Okay, so if you follow the one example in the user here, so the user here, as you can see, it has an attribute called fieldable. This is the one that we need to include all your data fields passed to that model. Okay, so we're not going to have the hidden fields and things like that here. If you do, you can put them here, but we're not going to use that. Just this one here. We will not use any token at all, so just the factory, that should be fine. So go back here. Then I'm going to just copy and paste it right in here. And the fields that I need are really the ID, the name, description, and then the URL. And that's it. That's all I need for this. And now the model will require the database information in order to connect it to our database. So make sure that your environment file is set to the one that we use. So I'm going to use the MySQL. So I'm going to turn off the SQLite. So I'll turn this back on, and we're going to use the database here. Okay, so make sure everything is correct. If it's not correct, and if your MySQL server is not on, then it's gonna have an error as well. So let's save this and make sure your app is running. Okay, now if you go to the site again, and as you can see, we are actually, it's already like working because we are trying to pass the fillable data to the model already. So as you can see, it has some error already. Now, also make sure that your database is working. As you can see here, this is the one we created the other time, and it has some data already pre-populated. If you don't have any data, just make sure you run the migration again and run the Cedar file to see this data with some information, or you can add it manually, doesn't matter. Okay, so now let's go and fix our information here. Since we're using the database now, this is not working anymore, right? Because we actually loading data from memory only. And this time we're trying to connect the database. Okay, so let's go back and see what we need to do in the code here. Now this part is done, so we can close this one. In the project controller, there's an error here. We'll see what that is, but we'll fix it. Okay, so here is the project. We don't have that anymore. So I'm not going to use these anymore because, again, we let the model class handle everything for us. Now, all we need to do in here, in this project controller, is access the project model to load the data. Now, if you go to the models file, there's a, I'll show you in a minute. Inside the, is it in here? I don't know where it is. Where's the model at? Let's go over here. Okay, and the models class in Eloquent model, if you click on that one there, you will see that this model file, it contains all the most of the things that you need. So here we go. We have the database connection, right? It does that for us. It has the function to fill. This is the one that's to fill your database. And there is the all for a get all of the data. As you can see, the query is a star. It's like select star from all column from your database table. That's what it is. And then there is an update, as you can see, update that will update and will fail. And there is a delete and a destroy, right, with the ID. And also, yeah, others as well. Okay, so it's all in here and already included for us. So therefore, we don't have to do anything here other than just call those functions and use it. Okay, so the project file, this is actually done. This is the model. We're just going to close this one here. Now, the controller is where we need to do some work. Now, when we try to load data from the portfolio, when I go to this link, what happens here? Remember, in the old way was we actually call the session variable to load the data. We pass a session or this variable here to the view to render to the view, right? So this time, we're not going to do that anymore. Okay, we're going to turn this off. And we're going to get the project still, but this time we're going to get project from the project, and then there is a function called all. Okay, this all function will return all the data from the database sets to a variable projects. We pass that to the view, and yeah, that's basically it. It's very, as you can see, it's very easy now, right? And so we got that one there. The show form, this is just a show form, so we don't need to do that. The delete with an ID. Now, this one here is also very easy. We just need to provide the following. So again, we're not going to use any of the sessions at all, okay? Or this will be turned off. We just need to pass in the ID to a delete function, right? So you would do that by calling, we need to find the ID, so you can do something like this. Project, there's a function called find, find or fail, and then you pass in the ID to that function, okay? And that's it. And once it's find it, and then you need to delete it. So you would then set a variable here called project to that. Once it found that the ID, it returns the project or the ID to this project. And then we're going to call the function called delete, and it's going to delete that from the database. Okay, and then we'll return a user back to the portfolio. And you can check the status of this project if it's true or false. But for now, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so as you can see, all of these here, we moved us to do 2 lines. Okay, very simple like that. And then the show edit form. Well, you know what? Let's do the delete off while we're here. There is a delete all that we did not we include in the button. So I'm going to go up here later on. We'll actually do it now. There's a delete, and there's going to be another delete all. It's going to duplicate this. Alt shift down, and this one here has no ID, so just delete. And we're going to call a function called delete all. That's the action. All right, so let's save this and go back to our controller, and let's create a delete all. I'm going to copy this. It'll be kind of similar, and I'm going to delete this chunk right here. And we don't need an ID for this one, so just delete all. And for this one is a little bit different. I'm not going to find it, right? I don't need to find it. I just basically call the delete function, and you do that. There are a couple ways to do this. You know, you can call the truncate function using a different methods, but I'm going to use this quick function called do the project. The project is the one that we need. Query, and then it's going to call a function called delete. That will delete your data. Okay, if you want to, so by deleting the data, if you're using a an auto increment for your ID, basically the IDs are retained wherever it was left off. If you want to delete and reset that ID altogether, then you want to call the truncate function instead. But that's all it is for delete all the data, and that should be gone. All right. So the edit form. Let's see, when we edit, yeah, this is just to show the form, right? So again, we're passing the object of a particular ID of a particular project. So we need to do the search, right? Once we search, we find it, and then we can go ahead and then, you know, render that to the view. So again, we're not going to need this anymore. Okay, we'll let the model handle that for us. I still need to get a project, a single project, and then I need to call a function called project find, and then we pass them the ID. Once you find that ID, it's going to return the project object to the project. We pass that to the view and render that to the view. Okay, just a single statement for this one here. And then this is for the post, right? When the edit comes back, we have the data, and then with a particular ID, we need to match that, right? So this time I'm going to make it a little bit different because remember our fieldable has the ID included. So that means I'm going to include that in the validation. So just do something like this. I'm going to update this and include that in the ID as well, make it as required. And then once it's all past the requirement, right? So we're not going to do this again. We turn all these off. All we need to do is now, before we return back to the portfolio, we're going to, right, you're going to update it. You're going to call the update function. Okay, so we still need to find it, kind of like the delete we did earlier. Yeah, like here, right? We need to find this project ID first. So I'm going to copy that, put it right in here. Find a project. Okay, once I find a project, then I will call the update function from this project object. And I need to pass to this one here the data coming from the request, right? The request, remember, request contains all the information from the form fields, or you can pass the data as an array, but I'm going to call the request here. And the request contains the data. So right into this function, I'll call the request, and then there's a function called all to pass all the records or all the fields and their values to the update function. And it's going to update the project based on this ID here we return here. And once that's updated, we return the user back to the portfolio page. Okay, so again, it's a lot of code removed. Okay, the add will be kind of similar. So I'm going to copy this again. The validation will be the same. So I need to add ID for both the edit and the add field. Now, for the add we did was that we actually randomized this here, right? So again, we're not going to need this anymore. Randomize the ID. So what I would do is I will generate the ID as a random number from the view and the form first. And then when it comes in here, we already have the random ID here, okay? And it will validate that. And then the same thing. This time though, we're not going to search, right? We are just going to basically add the request all object to the data source. So we're just going to basically do one very easy call, object. Great. And what are we creating? We're going to get the data from the request again and get all the fields. That's it. That's for updating. Adding new data to the database, and then redirect the user back to the portfolio, and we are done. So as you can see, it's quite short now, right? So we don't need all these stuff here. I will clean this later. Maybe actually we can delete them now. We don't need them anymore. Okay, we don't need that. This, we don't need this anymore. This either. And I don't need the sessions because, data are now live from the database. So there's no need to do a session anymore. Only do that for the welcome message. So that's that. And this one as well. We don't need this anymore. I'll keep the prefix as is, but you can see that's now much, much shorter. Okay. And these are our CRUD operations. We call this API. Although naturally an API, you want to do it. It's a little different, but the same idea. You can also create API that will be accessible via, a different app. Right? Okay, so let's see what we can do. And we just need to go and update the ID for the two fields, two views, the add view and the edit view. Okay. So somewhere in here, I'm going to include the ID view here. I'm going to copy this and just put it right in here. And I'll make this, the name will be ID. ID, I don't really need ID here because I'm not going to do anything to it. But the value is the project ID. And I also want to make the type to be hidden. Okay, I need to show that to the user. So that's included already. For the edit, the add, also need to do the same thing right in here. This time though, the value will be generated automatically. So we use the rand function here. I'm generating anything from 1000 to 9999. Okay, this is just my demo. Of course, you can do it whatever you want. And it will be included already when we run the submission form. Okay, so I think that's it. All right, so let's give it a try and see if everything works. If it's not, we'll fix it and see what the errors tells us. So go to your site, load the page, make sure everything broke. Okay, so I have an error in the model constructor, the data file. Okay, so yeah, the data file here, right? Remember, we don't need that anymore, and we need to basically just remove that completely because it's interfering. So what it is that in the file, the data file, this one here, remember, is calling the project model, and our project model we changed it, right? So we already removed all these constructor information here. So therefore, this is no longer relevant. So therefore, I'm going to just turn off everything here, or you can delete it if you want to. But since it's here, it's going to run it. So it's going to crash. I'm going to turn this off. And also from the web, I need to turn it off up here. Okay. So actually, we don't need this at all. And yeah, that's completely moved because everything's now from the database. Let's go and give it another shot. Here we go. Perfect. Let's go to the portfolio and boom, right? Perfect. Are these really data from a database? Well, we can check it out. All right. One thing, let's go and edit here. Let's say I'm going to edit my personal site. I'll call it exclamation mark and then exclamation mark here, and then leave that as is. Go and update. Okay. Now go to view and refresh the page, and boom, there it is. Right. So we know that it's coming from the database. How do we know for sure? You can do whatever you want, right? So I can I can edit this, right? So notice here, we have the exclamation mark. I can undo this again, try to edit, see if it works. Seems to be working correctly. Let's remove that, remove everything back to what it was before, and update, and boom. Oh, there's an error. All right, so let's see. Better data required doesn't exist. Oh, okay, I have an error there. But we'll fix it. But let's see. Yeah, let's fix the error in the require edit. So when we do the edit part, let's close that data file. The add will be find the controller. ID is required. Or required with a D. Okay, maybe I did wrong for the other one too. Let's see, required. Yeah, that's important. All right, so one more time, edit and remove that and this, and then a dot, and then hit submit, and still an error. All right, okay, so there's still an updated add field list. Okay, some errors in here. For some reason, I probably missed some information in this part yet. Well, you know what? Looks good to me. I couldn't find a reason why. Let's see what the error says again, and we'll troubleshoot that a little bit. So it says a column not found. Projects updated at. Yeah, we don't have the project. I don't think we have that in our database. I'm not sure what it's trying to call that. So it says, let's see, you want to run migration again. Maybe let's do that again and see what happens. Okay, that could be it because I ran different migration for the other one. So let's go back and do your migration. Let's do this. Let's do a let's see, our migration file. I want to make sure it's still the way I had it under the database. If you remember, in the database migrations projects, and this is the one. So we have ID, name, description. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. PHP and PHP artisan migrate and then reset. Okay, we do a reset and we roll everything back again. Migration not found. Projects table. Create projects table. Did I not do that right? Under the database migrations projects. Okay. All right, so we reset the table. Make sure that it's deleted from the database first. See. Laravel. Okay, that's been deleted. Okay, that's good. Let's try one more time. And now we're going to do a migrate. I will use the same here, but I'm going to call it migrate path only and hit enter. Okay, looks good. And then now I'm going to seed it. So if you remember, we do something like that, and we'll just say db seed. The class is called project seeder. Enter. Have an error here. Let's see. Project data is not defined. Constant. Okay, so it's some error in our code. We might have to fix those first. Now that we made some changes, let's go back to our seeders here. This is the one that we want to change. Now it says there's an error, right? So I want to move this back to the local. Let's do this. Make it simple. Just seeding our database. Go here, and I can't put constant in here. I'll just put a regular variable data, and then put a $sign back down here. And I think that should be good. Let's go back and try again. Right. Okay, so we are now done. Make sure the database is now filled again with the data, and it looks good. Okay, let's give it a try and see what happens. Let's go to the home page, go to the portfolio. All right, looks good. Let's do an edit and put here the exclamation mark, just one field. and it's still not found. Interesting. Something's going on here, and we need to figure out why. All right, see what's going on. The migration looks fine to me. I think it keeps calling a field that we don't need when we run the if I remember correctly. Let's see. The Cedar, that's fine, and our model. Okay, so it tends to add a field, updated field, which we don't need. I think we just turn that off. If I'm not mistaken, there is a variable, the timestamp. Let's see, when we create, let's say, a project here, because it does require, I think by default, it does require a timestamp. And we can turn that off. We don't need that in it to be in our program. So where did I put it? Into project. Okay, so I think we just set a variable call timestamp. We'll set that to false. I think that solves the problem. We don't need a timestamp variable. If you want to, then you will have to, I think you have to add it as a part of the your database table. If you don't need it, then we'll just turn that off. Okay, I think that's what's causing it. Let's see what happens. Let's go back and try again. Let's try this site again. All right, let's try one more time. Put exclamation mark and submit. Oh, it's still not working correctly. I'm stumped. One more time. Maybe it's not timestamp. Is it timestamps? Timestamps. Maybe that's what it was. Okay. And submit. Come on. There it is. All right. Okay. So that was it. So just make sure you turn that off. If you don't want to include it, if you do need that, if you don't include that, then you have to add the column timestamp or updated at, and then also there's like 2 fields you need to add it in your database. But just turn those off, and then we're good to go. Okay, so let's see if we can add a new project in here. App 1, best app, and then here HTTP best app, and submit. There we go. We add that here. Okay, perfect. And we can also verify over here in our database just to make sure it's there. And it's indeed, here it is. Okay, with ID already filled in for us. We can also delete them. All right, so it's good. If you do another delete, you should see that also these should be updated. Perfect. Now, if you do a delete all, and everything is now gone, and our site will be completely wiped out as well. All right, so perfect. And that's all we need to do in this example here. So let's go back and just fill out the data back again, and we are now good to go. I'm going to go and seed it again. So one more time, and the data has been seeded. Let's go back and try again, refresh our page, and everything should come back. There we go. All right, so that is how you would do it using the data model to connect to your database. Make sure again that you turn this variable off if you don't need to include that. Otherwise, you need to include the updated timestamp in here. And if you include a timestamp like the way you saw in the user here, like this, not here, but we need to turn that on and off. Okay, so just do that part. The controller is where all the action happens. We need just to do the validation. If you don't do that, you just basically call these functions here, and that will do the job. So review these functions. A lot of these functions are also inside the model class, if you want to look into that, where you can actually do more query. If it's not what you're looking for, then you can do your operations here, and you run your own query, and run that and produce whatever you need. Now, in a separate case where you actually create your own API, you would not put your functions here. So instead of doing this way, you would use the API file and put your API calls here, and then this would be like the get, put, up, update, delete request, as opposed to here we only use like the get and the post, right? So if you use an actual API, then you will return the data back as JSON data to wherever it's being called. You put your source here, and because using this type of APIs, you don't really need the view, right? So you just return the data back, and then you will create a controller was similar to what you have here, but instead of returning a view, you will return the actual data back. So you return the project back or whatever the message is if it's successful. Maybe in a separate video or something, we'll do something like that. But for now, this is it for this model part 2. So thank you, and have any questions, let me know.